For a long time, Earth was only a whisper in the galaxy. Other civilizations spoke of it as a small, unimportant place, a world at the edge of the spiral arms where nothing great had ever happened. To them, humans were fragile creatures, soft-boned, thin-skinned, bound to gravity and needing air and water just to survive. Compared to species that could breathe acid or swim through plasma storms, humans looked weak. But weakness is not the same as helplessness. And those who laughed at Earth often forgot that humans had survived their own wars, their own famines, their own nights filled with fire. They had walked through centuries of blood and still stood tall. In their bones was endurance. In their hearts was a fire that had never gone out. Yet the galaxy rarely looked that deep. Instead, traders and scouts mocked the planet. A dirt world, they called it. A cradle species. A people too young to matter. When great empires clashed, they did not even think of asking Earth to choose sides. What could such a primitive people offer? Still, there were rumors. The whispers began in backwater cantinas told by smugglers who swore they saw something strange at the edge of Sol, a shape that swallowed starlight, a vessel that should not exist. Most listeners laughed. Smugglers told wild tales every day. But the rumors grew. Miners working near Saturn claimed their sensors failed for hours, as if swallowed by shadows. Merchant ships reported being followed by silhouettes that left no trace, no heat, no signal. Scouts swore they saw massive constructions hidden behind Neptune's orbit, then vanished without explanation. One rumor spoke louder than all the others. Earth is building something new, something dangerous. The galaxy did not believe it at first. How could a backwater planet succeed where ancient powers had failed? Thousands of empires had tried to control the deep mysteries of physics and failed. The manipulation of dark matter, the invisible ocean that wove through the universe, was beyond even the greatest minds. To twist it, to shape it, to build with it, was considered impossible. Yet in the shadows of Sol, humans were trying. They did not announce their progress. They did not boast or threaten. They simply worked, as they always had, in silence. Generations of engineers built in secret. Families gave their lives to projects no one else in the galaxy could imagine. Their ambition was not spoken in words but burned in their eyes. And slowly the galaxy began to sense a change. Diplomats sent to Earth reported a strange confidence in human leaders. The old nervousness was gone, replaced by calm smiles that carried an edge. Spacefarers said Earth's orbital yards glowed brighter at night, filled with activity. Even the small freighters of the humans began to look different. Heavier hulls, strange coatings, lines that did not match known designs. First, no one cared. Empires were busy with their own wars, their own rivalries. Who would waste time worrying about a world of soft-skinned apes? But the rumors kept growing, and with them came unease. Because if the whispers were true, if humans had really touched dark matter, if they had really shaped the hidden mass of the universe into weapons, then everything would change. No shield would stop them. No armor would resist. No star map would protect any empire, because the dark matter was everywhere, woven into the fabric of creation itself. Most laughed, but a few grew quiet. They remembered history, and how often humanity had been underestimated. Every time the Dirtborn had risen higher than expected. Every time they had endured. And so the rumor spread like fire through the stars. Earth is not weak. Earth is building warships. Earth is preparing for something the galaxy has never seen. And though no one could yet prove it, the whispers carried a weight that made even the boldest captains pause. Because sometimes rumors are the first shadows of truth. The galaxy was never a peaceful place. Empires old and proud circled each other like predators waiting for weakness. Fleets clashed at distant borders, while merchants carried whispers of blood and broken treaties. In such a galaxy, the small and the weak were easy prey. And to most, Earth was small, Earth was weak. So when the rumors of hidden ships reached the ears of the powerful, many laughed, but some grew uneasy. If the whispers were true, if humans were building something dangerous, then it would not be long before others wanted to test it. The first to move were the greedy, a coalition of mid-level powers, hungry for resources and eager to show strength, decided that Earth would make the perfect example. Better to strike before they rise, their lord said. Better to cut the seed before it becomes a tree. They gathered fleets, hundreds of warships from different banners unified only by arrogance and fear. To them, Earth was a dirt world sitting undefended at the edge of Sol. What could one small planet do against such force? They came not only for conquest but for pride, to crush a rumor, to remind the galaxy that no cradle world could dream beyond its place. When the first scouts crossed into the Sol system, they expected resistance. They expected orbital platforms, maybe a handful of defense ships, perhaps a desperate show of weapons. What they found instead was silence. Earth did not answer their hails with fear. Human voices on comms spoke calmly, politely, asking them to leave. There was no panic in their tone, no begging, no attempt to negotiate. Just a simple warning. You should not be here. It unsettled the scouts, though they did not admit it. They reported back. The humans are quiet, too quiet. There is something they are hiding. Still, the coalition fleets advanced. At the edge of Neptune's orbit, they began to spread their formation. Banners lit across the void, war horns sounded over comms, and weapons primed. To them, it was already won. Yet something felt wrong. Sensors flickered. Ship crews complained of ghost signals on their screens, shapes that appeared and vanished in the darkness. Some reported hearing low hums through their hulls, like whispers from the void itself. Captains ordered their crews to ignore it. The humans are trying to scare us, they said. They are weak, they have nothing. But unease crept in. Even the bravest pilots began to glance at the shadows between stars. Near Saturn, the coalition fleet paused. There they expected Earth's defenses to rise at last. Yet again, nothing came. Just that same calm voice. You should turn back, the commanders laughed. Let them speak. Soon their voices will be gone. But their laughter was hollow, because deep down, something felt different. Humans did not sound like prey anymore. They sounded like hunters waiting in the tall grass. And still, no weapons fired, no ships emerged. Only the silence grew heavier, wrapping around the invading fleets like a fog. Some junior officers begged their superiors to retreat. They had studied history. They knew the old stories of Earth, their brutal wars, their relentless survival, their refusal to bow even when the odds were hopeless. They are not weak, one whispered to his commander. They are waiting. But the coalition leaders dismissed them. Arrogance is a blinding fire, and theirs burned too bright. So the order was given, advance toward Earth. Engines roared, banners lit, and hundreds of ships surged forward, certain of victory. None of them knew what waited in the darkness ahead. For, in the cold silence of Sol, the shadows were moving. The fleets of the coalition swept into the inner system like a storm. Hundreds of warships glided across the black, their hulls shining with the pride of their empires. They expected Earth to tremble, to cry out for mercy. Yet Earth stayed silent. From the windows of their ships, alien crews gazed toward the small, blue planet. To them it looked fragile, almost laughable. How could such a delicate world resist the firepower of entire armadas? Already commanders were making plans, what cities to burn, which resources to strip, what spoils to carry home. Then it happened. The stars shifted. At first, the crews thought their sensors had failed again. Dots of light disappeared, whole constellations swallowed. Pilots rubbed their eyes, certain it was some trick of space dust. But then the shadows moved. Vast, angular shapes glided out from nothingness. They did not shine. They did not glow. They looked like holes torn into the fabric of the universe, devouring every beam of starlight that touched them. The first screams echoed across comms. Contact! Unknown vessels! They're by the void! They're everywhere! The coalition fleet scrambled, forming defensive lines. But their sensors could not lock on. Every pulse, every scan came back broken, as if the ships did not exist. The shadows slid closer, silent and cold, until their sheer size became undeniable. Earth's warships had arrived. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. No polished silver, no banners, no insignia. Their hulls were carved from dark matter itself, invisible and untouchable, like weapons forged from the universe's hidden heart. Against them, the armadas looked small, almost childlike. One commander shouted for fire. Beams of plasma, streams of missiles, and torrents of energy filled the void. For a moment, space was lit brighter than a sun. But when the light faded, the shadows remained, untouched, unmoved, as if the attacks had been swallowed whole. Fear gripped the invaders. Nothing in their long histories had ever defied their weapons so completely. And then one of the human ships fired. It did not shoot beams or missiles. It simply rippled as though a silent wave had been released. In an instant, one of the coalition flagships, 10 kilometers of armored glory, was gone. No wreckage, no flame, just absence, as though it had never existed. Across the fleets, panic exploded. Officers shouted, pilots wept. Some tried to flee, but their engines failed as the shadows drifted closer. Others fired blindly, their weapons scattering like sparks into the dark. The comms filled with voices. They're erasing us. Nothing works. Nothing. By the stars, what are these things? But the humans did not answer. Their ships glided forward with terrifying calm, silent as the grave. To the aliens, it felt less like a battle and more like a judgment. On Earth, billions watched the transmission feeds. They saw their warships move like predators through the void, and for the first time in history, humanity was not the one fearing extinction. It was the galaxy that trembled. The coalition leaders tried to rally their forces. Fight, fight or die, they roared. But courage drained quickly when every shot vanished, when every defense was useless, when comrades disappeared without trace. One by one, ships began to break formation. Some tried to beg for surrender. Some shut down their systems and drifted, helplessly. Some simply screamed into the comms until silence took them. And as the shadows pressed forward, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in living memory, no empire, no armada, no proud fleet dared to laugh at Earth. The humans had shown their hand, and the galaxy went silent. News traveled faster than light. What happened at Sol could not be hidden. Every fragment of data, every terrified broadcast, every scream of a dying commander was carried by traitors, spies, and frightened survivors across the spiral arms. And so the halls of power fell into silence. In the Grand Council chambers of the old empires, leaders sat stiff in their chairs watching the recordings again and again. They saw ships vanish into nothing. They saw weapons that should have shattered moons simply dissolve into shadows. They saw the black warships of Earth drifting forward without a single word. It was not a battle. It was a revelation. Ambassadors argued, their voices shaking. Impossible! Some shouted, no species can control dark matter, the laws of physics. But their words died when the images replayed. The shadows were real. The destruction was real. The silence of the coalition fleets was real. Fear settled heavy over every council. For centuries, the great powers had believed themselves untouchable. Their fleets spanned sectors. Their weapons leveled planets. Their science touched stars. Yet in one night, all of that pride crumbled. A backwater world, once mocked as fragile, had unveiled something beyond imagination. One elder ruler, scales gray with age, whispered the truth no one wanted to hear. If Earth chooses war, the galaxy belongs to them. The word struck the chamber like a blade, because it was true. No shields could stand against such weapons. No fleet could resist. No empire could protect itself, not even in its deepest core systems. Dark matter was not a resource locked to one world. It was everywhere, in every corner of space, woven into creation itself. If humans had mastered it, then nowhere was safe. Panic spread. Some leaders demanded alliances at once. We must unite, they cried. Only together can we resist. Others spoke of desperate measures, striking Earth before their shadow. Fleet grew larger, but even those words trembled with fear. If hundreds of ships could be erased in moments, what hope did another attack hold? In private, many empires considered surrender without even being asked. Some sent envoys racing toward Sol with messages of friendship, loaded with gifts and apologies. Others simply closed their borders, hoping the shadows would never come knocking. Tiu, Galaxy had seen countless wars. Worlds burned. Civilizations rose and fell, and power shifted like tides. But this was different. This was not another empire. This was not another hungry conqueror. This was something the galaxy had never imagined, a species that had leapt into a realm of science no one else could touch. And the most terrifying part, humanity did not boast. The recordings showed no celebration, no cries of victory. The human ships did not even speak as they advanced. They simply acted calm and relentless, as if judgment itself had taken shape. That silence was what broke the galaxy's heart, because silence meant certainty. Silence meant they did not need to explain, did not need to threaten, did not need to roar with pride. Silence meant they knew they could not be stopped. In time, the recordings were shown not only in council halls but in schools, in marketplaces, in homes. Children stared at the shadows with wide eyes. Merchants whispered of changing trade routes. Soldiers questioned their worth. For what could bravery mean against weapons that erased reality itself? And everywhere, the questions spread. What will Earth do now? Would the humans conquer? Would they claim the stars as theirs? Or would they remain quiet, their black ships a reminder of what could happen to anyone who dared test them? No one knew, and not knowing was worse than war, for the galaxy had lived with enemies before, but now it lived with shadows. After the silence of Sul, after the shadows erased an entire fleet, every empire held its breath. The dark matter warships did not move beyond the human system. They lingered there, like wolves at the edge of a firelight, silent and patient. Worlds across, the spiral arm panicked. Some leaders urged their people to hide in fear. Others begged to send armies, though their voices shook with doubt. Traders rerouted their ships far from Earth's borders. Colonists whispered that the humans would strike any day. But weeks passed, then months, and still the dark ships only watched. The galaxy began to ask a question that burned in every mind. What did Earth want? Finally, the answer came. Across every channel, in every known tongue, a single transmission was broadcast. The voice was calm, steady, and human. It carried no arrogance, no thunder, only quiet strength. We do not seek thrones, the humans said. We do not seek tribute. But hear this truth. Never again will Earth bow to another. Never again. Will humans be prey? If you come as friends, you will be welcomed. If you come as conquerors, you will be forgotten. The words struck deeper than weapons. Some leaders wept in relief. They had expected demands, the crushing weight of new rulers. Instead, they heard dignity, not domination. But others trembled, for the message was also a warning. It did not offer mercy to those who tested it. It promised erasure. On distant worlds, citizens listened with awe. For the first time, they felt something they had never felt from a cradle species: authority. This was not the voice of the weak. It was the voice of survivors who had risen from their own ashes again and again, until nothing could break them. The message spread not only through words but through silence. Because after that transmission, the humans said nothing more. They did not argue. They did not explain. They let the galaxy think, fear, and wonder, and the galaxy did. In the courts of warlike empires, rulers hesitated before sending fleets to raid their neighbors. If Earth could erase armadas in seconds, what would happen if humans saw their violence as a threat? In the merchant guilds, debates raged about whether to open trade with Sol. Some feared angering the shadows. Others said friendship with humans could mean safety in dangerous times. Even among ordinary people, stories began to change. Children stopped calling humans dirt-born. They gave them new names whispered at night: the shadow bearers, the silent judges, the keepers of the dark. Yet not all hearts were calm. For every voice that spoke of peace, another whispered of fear. They say they do not want thrones, one ambassador murmured, but what if one day they change their minds? What if one day the shadows are no longer content to stay near Sol? No answer came. Humans gave no reassurances beyond their single promise, and that promise was enough to change the galaxy, because every admiral, every soldier, every ruler who remembered the recordings of Sol knew the truth. The humans did not need to conquer to rule. Their silence ruled. Their presence ruled. Their refusal to kneel had already bent the galaxy's will. One council member said it best, his voice trembling as he looked at the recording of those impossible ships. They do not have to raise their weapons. We have already surrendered in our hearts. After Earth's message, the galaxy shifted. Slowly at first, like a great beast stirring from sleep, and then all at once. For the first time in living memory, old empires put down their weapons. Borders that had burned for centuries suddenly grew quiet. Ambassadors who once spat curses at each other now exchanged careful greetings, because in every council chamber the image of Earth's shadow ships still lingered, black against the stars. No one wanted to be the next coalition. Treaties that had been impossible for generations were signed within weeks. Rivals agreed to trade routes. Old hatreds were tucked away beneath polished words. The galaxy did not become peaceful out of love. It became peaceful out of fear. Fear of waking the shadows. Merchants began to sail towards Sol. Their cargo holds were heavy with gifts, jewels from dying stars, crystals from gas giants, technologies once guarded as secrets. They offered them not as tribute but as tokens of friendship, and the humans accepted politely but without greed. The mystery only deepened. Scholars begged for answers. How had humans touched dark matter? How had they built ships from what no other species could even hold? They traveled to Earth offering knowledge of their own in exchange, but the humans smiled and gave little away. Their silence spoke louder than any explanation. Among the common people of the galaxy, stories grew like wildfire. Children carved shapes of shadow ships into the sand. Poets spoke of Earth as a world born from darkness. Sailors prayed before entering Sol, whispering promises to return as friends, not foes. In military academies, cadets studied the Battle of Sol, though most called it the silence. They watched the recordings of fleets vanishing without trace. They memorized the calm human voice, "Never again will we bow." And as they studied, many asked the same question their teachers could not answer: how does one fight a war against shadows? Some said it was better not to find out. Yet even as fear held the galaxy in place, respect began to bloom. For humans did not send their ships to claim worlds. They did not demand oaths of loyalty. They did not sit on thrones carved from the bones of the defeated. They simply lived quietly but visibly. Their ships remained near Sol, guardians of a single blue world. And slowly admiration began to replace terror. Some species saw in humanity a reflection of themselves, small, once mocked, now powerful. They felt hope that maybe they too could rise beyond their limits. Others saw in humans a justice the galaxy had long forgotten. For Earth did not strike first. Earth had defended itself. And in defending, it had shown the galaxy the cost of arrogance, but not everyone found comfort. In the darker corners of the stars, whispers grew sharp. What if they are only waiting, some said. What if this silence is only a mask? When their fleet grows large enough, will they not spread like a shadow across every world? Suspicion gnawed at proud empires who had once dreamed of ruling the galaxy. Their pride could not accept that humanity, a species they had once mocked as weak, now held the power to erase them. Still, no fleet dared to move against Earth again, not after what they had seen. And so the galaxy lived in a strange balance, half fear, half admiration, half silence. Wars ended, but trust was fragile. Trade grew, but hearts trembled. In the middle of it all, Earth remained the same small blue world, spinning quietly in its orbit, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. For the galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Sometimes the smallest voice, the quietest people, the most underestimated of all, carry the greatest shadow. Centuries passed, yet the memory of Sol never faded. Across the galaxy, people still spoke in hushed voices of the day when the shadows rose and the stars themselves seemed to vanish. The coalition that had once marched proudly against Earth no longer existed. Their banners were gone, their names forgotten, their ships erased in silence. What remained was only a warning carved into history. Do not underestimate the Dirt-born. But Earth was no longer called Dirt-born. Children who grew up in distant worlds learned new names for humanity. The Shadow-bearers, the silent judges, the keepers of the dark. Titles carried in awe, sometimes with fear, sometimes with respect, but always with reverence. And yet, the strangest part was this. Humanity never became conquerors. Their fleets did not sweep across the spiral arms. Their soldiers did not march into foreign capitals. Their leaders did not crown themselves emperors of the stars. The dark matter warships remained near Sol, drifting like guardians at the edge of light. Occasionally they moved, escorting traders, shielding colonies, or appearing suddenly when a people cried for help against tyranny. Then, as silently as they had come, they disappeared again. To the galaxy, they became legend. Some believed the humans were protectors, watching over the weak. Others swore they were judges, waiting for the right moment to strike at those who grew too arrogant. And a few whispered darker tales that one day the shadows would finally stretch across every star. But no one truly knew. For the humans never explained. They lived, they worked, they loved, just as they always had. But their silence was louder than any speech. Their patience was more powerful than any law. On Earth, generations grew up under the weight of that silence. Children looked to the skies and saw the great ships guarding their home, and they felt pride. Old men told their grandchildren of the day the galaxy fell quiet, and tears shone in their eyes. Humanity had always fought to survive, and now survival had become strength, and the galaxy remembered. In alien marketplaces, storytellers spoke of the humans not as weak, but as unbreakable. In military academies, cadets still studied the silence of Sol, not to learn how to win against humans, but to remember why they should never try. In temples, priests used the tale as proof that arrogance leads only to ruin. The shadow. Warships became more than machines. They became symbols. Symbols of defiance. Symbols of survival. Symbols of what happens when a people refuse to bow. Even when centuries turned into millennia, the memory did not die. Every new species that rose to the stars heard the story, passed from one generation to the next. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Do not mistake patience for surrender, for the humans are watching. One ancient ambassador, long before his death, said it best. The humans did not conquer the galaxy. They conquered its fear. And so the galaxy went on, empires rising and falling, wars flickering and fading, but always with a quiet shadow at the edge, a reminder that in the heart of a small blue world a fire burned. It was not a fire of conquest, it was not a fire of greed. It was the fire of will. And though stars themselves may one day burn out, though galaxies may scatter into the void, that fire would remain. Because humanity had written its place in the stars, not with thrones, not with crowns, not with endless wars, but with silence, and silence is remembered forever.